Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the DFS Army Killshot podcast. I'm Kyle Marley. With me this week is James Blissett, aka Lucrative MMA, and we're going to break down this UFC Vegas 60 card for you guys today. This is my first time doing a podcast with James, but I'm excited to have him on. I know he's a sharp MMA handicapper. He's also good at analyzing and breaking down fights. So thank you for coming on, James. How you doing, and how you feeling about this card?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on. This will be the first time we've done a stream together. So hopefully the synergy is there. Hopefully the energy is there. But more importantly, hopefully the analysis is there, even if it's a terrible podcast between me and you, as long as we get the information out there, as long as we get, break down these fights in an analytical way and capitalize on some of these incorrect lines, which I believe there are this weekend, then I'll be a happy man. So thanks for having me on, man.
Hey, man, anytime. And I'm glad to hear you think some lines are off. So let's get right into it.
Yep.
First fight on the card, we got Nicholas Mata minus 200 against Cameron Van Camp. And just typically for DraftKings, I like my curtain jerkers. I feel like most of the time you got the lower level fighters in that first fight of the night. Someone's more likely to make a mistake, get finished early, lead to a lot of points than maybe the other person who scored isn't very highly owned because people possibly haven't heard of these people. So I'm kind of on that same line in this one. I do think both of these guys have a high ceiling. Nicholas Mata would be the better boxer. He's got heavy hands, knockout power with just one punch. But he's a little low volume for me. I never like when people waste a little bit too much cage time. And it's really just the striking that we're worried about with Mata. Where on the other side, Cameron Van Camp, he is dropping down to 155 pounds for the first time. Well, for the first time in a long time anyways. And he was looking big at 170 pounds. So I'm interested to see how he looks on the scales. But I think he's got a big grappling edge in this fight. I think based on what he was throwing in his first fight, which ended early, I mean, he was throwing a lot of kicks out there. Just volume-wise, I feel like he could beat Mata over the course of 15 minutes in a striking match, but he's very hittable. I don't know if he can last 15 minutes if he eats shots from Mata. And then, Mata's been knocked out about 3 times as well. So I think Van Camp is in play for a knockout. He can win this fight by any method. So my preferred play in this one is going to be Cameron Van Camp on DraftKings, just because I think he has more ways to score. He could take this fight to the ground. And if you're winning fights on the ground on DraftKings, that's a good thing. You're scoring a lot more with takedowns, top control time than you are just with significant strikes throughout the fight. Where on the Mata side, he is a big favorite. So we need a high ceiling from him. And really the only way that he can hit a high ceiling is by getting an early knockout. So I would rather take my chances on the underdog in this one. But how are you seeing this fight going down? And who do you like in this one, James?
Yeah, this is an exciting fight. Like you said, oftentimes with the first fight of the night, it's one of the funnest fights on the card. It's kind of like overlooked a lot of times. And there was a little angle I like to bet middle of last year, I believe it was. I started kind of seeing it a little bit more, that the first fights of the night and then sometimes the first fights of the main card, as long as they don't get switched about, which happens a lot right before the fights and stuff, or fight week, as we know, especially from last week. But if they keep those fights in place that they originally had booked, they're often fights that finish inside the distance. Now, I had a little narrative going on thinking, maybe it's because the UFC want the first fight of the night to be a war, to end inside the distance. It kind of sets the tone for the rest of the event. And same thing with the main card. They want to open up with a bang. And honestly, this week, I feel like they've done it as well. I think Cameron Van Camp and Nicholas Mata is going to end inside the distance. The bookies believe that as well. You can get like a decent price on the under 2.5 right now. It is changed a little bit. But yeah, I just feel like both fighters have chance to win this fight. I am more on the Mata side as of now. But as I mentioned, I do want to do a little bit more tape study on this one. There's a lot of fights on the card this week, and this is one I want to delve into a little bit more deeply. But I feel like Mata has a good chance of getting the KO at some point.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, Van Camp is hittable, and he's coming off a brutal knockout loss like 4 or 5 months ago. He's coming back pretty quick from that one, and Mata does have that one hit kill you power. So it definitely would not shock me to see Van Camp get knocked out in this one. But if he can make it, to the 3rd round, I feel like that'll kick Mata off the optimal lineup just because he won't have enough volume leading up to it. And as long as he's not getting knockdowns along the way, it's really just that finishing bonus that's going to be getting the majority of his points in this one. So I'll take some shots on Mata, but I would much rather have, if I was making one lineup, I would much rather have Van Camp in there. Just save the salary, get up to other favorites I like more, who are maybe more likely to look to grapple, which is always my favorite on DraftKings.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, next one on the card, we do have one I like a lot. Just in general, this is one of my favorite fights on the card. We got Javeed Bachelorette minus 165 against Tony Gravely plus 140. I think Gravely has two big edges in this fight, just his one-punch KO power and his wrestling. But that's two things that could beat a whole lot of people. And he's live to win this one with just those two edges as well. But how do you see this fight going down?
Man, this is one that I have really no solid read on. I mean, the thing about this fight is that Tony Gravely is mainly a wrestler, right? I mean, the dude averages, I don't know what it is, 5 or 6 takedowns per 15 minutes. The dude will just consistently shoot takedowns. But as you said, he's got that one-hit quitter on the feet as well sometimes. I mean, we saw it in the Nate Maness fight. And shout out to Nate Maness, an absolute dog. Came back and cashed me that plus 170 ticket. One of the best comebacks there. But Gravely almost had him out in that first round, you know. And then in his last fight against Johnny Munoz, he knocked him out within a minute. So, I mean, the dude can hit really hard. He's a shorter, stockier guy. On the other hand, we got Bachelorette, who's coming in. He's actually a UK fighter. I think he grew up in London, just like me. So, you know, always support those guys a little bit more. So I'm hoping that he wins the fight. But really, it's hard to know who's going to win. The reason is because we haven't seen Javeed Bachelorette's tested really at all in his career. And we most certainly haven't seen him tested in the wrestling. Like, yeah, I've seen him defend a couple of takedowns. But I haven't seen a guy just go out and shoot consistently on him like Tony Gravely will do. Because believe you me, Tony Gravely's not going to want to be on the feet with this guy. Now, as I said, he's always got the chance to land a knockout blow. You know, it can happen. But I think Bachelorette's going to be poking him with teeps. I think Bachelorette's movement is much higher, much more, you know, he's a much better mover. He's a much better mover. And he has more ring IQ in terms of his footwork, his movement, his setting up of shots, this type of thing, which can go a long way in MMA. So, look, we don't know how Bachelorette's going to deal with a takedown defense. And, you know, we can assume that he'll do decent because he has defended a couple of takedowns. But he's never fought a wrestler of this caliber. So, for me, it's a complete stay-away fight. If I was going to look to play it, I'd probably play Bachelorette inside the distance just because we've seen Tony Gravely, you know, finished quite a few times now. We know Bachelorette is an out-and-out finisher, apart from his last fight against Jones, which, you know, a few different sequences he could have got the fight. So, yeah, I'll go with Bachelorette, London guy, to get it done inside the distance, but I'm going to be staying away in terms of my money.
Yeah, I agree again. I do like Bachelorette to get the win here. I just think he's the better minute winner on the feet. He can win this fight by any method. He can get a knockout. I do think the longer this fight goes, the more likely he is to get a knockout. I feel like he's going to be the clear winner in round 3, especially if Gravely is wrestling leading up to that point. I think that'll wear him out a little bit quicker. And he's got some mean chokes as well. So if Gravely is going for takedowns throughout this fight, it would not shock me to see him get submitted in any round. So I am going to roll with Bachelorette as my pick, but on DraftKings, man, anyone who can land over 6 takedowns per 15 minutes and they're priced as an underdog, it's going to be somebody I'm interested in. So I definitely will have exposure to Gravely. This will be one of my higher owned fights on the card. I don't think the judges will be needed. And if they are, I still think Gravely can score over 100 points in a decision if he's the one who gets the win. If Bachelorette wins a decision, I would worry about his score, especially as a favorite, because I don't think he's going to be going out there taking Gravely down. And I would expect him to be spending time, you know, against the cage or on his back on the mat where he's looking to get back up, and he's just not going to be scoring points during those moments. So it is really the finish that I'm hoping for on the Bachelorette side, but that's how I see him getting the win. So I want exposure there as well. And ideally, I'll be overweight to both sides of this fight if I can make that happen.
Yeah. And, you know, Gravely is the type of underdog that you want to play on DraftKings because, first of all, Bachelorette's taking a huge step up in competition here. And we never know how these undefeated, you know, he's 12-0, he's undefeated, never really been tested. We never know how these guys are going to perform when they take that step up in competition. So, you know, Gravely, he's going to be a solid underdog. He's going to be pretty popular, in my opinion, in terms of DraftKings and just in general on the money line. So, yeah, I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think he'll be popular as well. When I didn't do any research and I saw salaries were out, I just did a quick filler lineup. and Tony found his way in there just off memory. Now that I'm picking Bachelorette, I don't know if he'll end up staying in there, my single entry anyways, but one of them will be.
Yeah.
All right, which one we got on the card? Oh, next one. We got Daniel Zellhuber -305 against Trey Ogden +255. I think this Zellhuber kid looks pretty good. He's got some good striking. He could strike at a high pace for a full 15 minutes. And Ogden, I was really not impressed with his striking, really in any fight. And I think if he's not having success with his takedowns, he's probably going to get knocked out at some point, because I think Zellhuber's edge on the feet is just too big for Ogden to hang with for 15 minutes, to be honest with you. So I think this is striker versus grappler matchup. Ogden has to get this fight to the ground to have a chance. If he can win by submission. He can maybe win a decision if he's able to hang on to top control for long enough. But I'm going to go with Zellhuber in this one, and I think the line is justified. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think Zellhuber should get the win. Trey Ogden's not a good fighter. You know, there was at points where he was getting beat on the feet by Jordan Leavitt, which is like a really, really bad red flag in MMA. So I can't really back anybody who's losing on the feet at times to Jordan Leavitt, especially when the opponent looks to have decent takedown defense. You know, we don't know much about this guy. He came in on the Contender Series, but yeah, I feel like Zellhuber's probably going to be able to cruise to a win. He might even probably get it done inside the distance, honestly.
Yeah, he is definitely priced up in this fight, and he is a striker. I doubt he's going to be going out there looking for takedowns against Ogden. So it might be another one where he needs to get a knockout at some point, but he's someone who can have enough volume if he gets a third-round knockout where he can actually score well over 100 points. So I do like Zellhuber here if I can afford him, but there's a lot of favorites on this card who I want to target. So I'm not going to really make it a point to put him in my lineups. If he fits, he fits. Cool with me. But I'm not too interested in the Ogden side in this one. So it'll be more Zellhuber or pass for me.
Yeah.
Next one on the card, we got another one I like a lot. I don't think the judges will be needed in this one. Neither does Vegas. We got Jillian Robertson -145 against Maria Agapova. Striker versus grappler matchup. How do you see it going down?
Good fight, man. I can't wait. It's going to be a crazy fight. You know, Maria Agapova always brings the violence. And honestly, Jillian Robinson does in most of her fights too, you know. As you said, striker versus grappler. Maria Agapova has been exposed time and time again now. You know, even back in the day, like talking 3-4 years ago when she fought in the Contender Series, you know, she was just taken down quite easily by Tracy Cortez there, although she did rally at points. But her grappling is her kryptonite, right? We know that. She's been taken down multiple times in the UFC. Completely gasses out at times. You know, she gassed out against Shayna Dobson. She looked like she gassed out in her last fight against Marina Moroz. I played Marina Moroz there as an underdog, and honestly, she looked -1,000. It's and you know that's not a joke there. She looked around 90% in that spot. Who knows? We can't take too much from one outcome, right? Which is what I always say. But she genuinely looked -900 in that matchup. Marina Moroz just took her back, grinded her out, took her down multiple times, choked her out in round 2. And Marina Moroz is not really known for that type of game plan. So, you know, when fighters who haven't really shown too much offensive grappling, submissions, this type of stuff, finishing ability like Moroz hasn't before, when they go out and get an early dominant finish like that, it's always a red flag. So Maria Agapova is not to be trusted. I mean, she comes in looking terrible against Shayna Dobson, gets finished as the biggest underdog biggest favorite in UFC history, gets finished, and then looks great against Sabina Mazo, and then just gets dominated again by Moroz. So the girl is untrustworthy. Jillian Robinson, on the other hand, is also fairly untrustworthy. That's why I think it could lend itself to a finish here. You know, both fighters could be not be trusted and both get finished. I do kind of like Jillian Robinson more, though. I feel like Jillian Robinson's game is the worst game for Maria Agapova. You know, she's going to push the takedowns. She's going to go for the grappling. She's a good jiu-jitsu fighter. She's always competing in jiu-jitsu tournaments. She's serviceable, very serviceable on the ground, especially in that division. She's probably one of the best submission artists when she gets on top. And you have to believe she's going to get on top at some point in this fight. So if that's the case, you kind of have to believe she gets a submission. Now, there is a potential where Maria Agapova gets up on her feet and, you know, finishes her inside the distance. Like you said, I do think someone's getting finished in this fight. I am going to pick Maria Agapova as the one being finished. So yeah, I kind of like Jillian in this spot.
I do too. I think either one of them can dominate the fight. If Robertson can get the fight to the ground, she could dominate there. But if she is not having success with takedowns, I think she gets dominated on the feet by Agapova. So just in general, it's a good fight to target. Whoever you like, throw them in your lineups. And they're priced kind of mid-range as well. We got Robertson at 8,500, Agapova 7,700. And I know Robertson has 7 wins on her fight log that she scored over 90 points, even up to like 117. So if she can do that in this fight, she could break the slate at 8,500. I'm definitely on Team Robertson if I had to choose a side, but it's another fight where I want exposure to both sides because if Agapova wins this fight, I think she can score very well also as an underdog. Girls usually don't end up too over-owned, so that's always another thing I like to target. But I am on the Robertson side. I think she's more likely to get takedowns. She knows her advantages, and that's going to be on the ground here. And I think she gets a submission along the way in this one at some point.
Agreed.
All right, next one on the card, we got Loma Lookboonmee minus 210 against Denise Gomez plus 180. Gomez is coming off a win on the Contender Series like 2 weeks ago, something like that. I think she's the girlfriend of Carol Rosa, and she kind of fights like her. She's just an aggressive striker, can fight at a high pace for 15 minutes. I think she has the pace edge, the boxing edge, the harder hands, the power edge in this fight. And then Lookboonmee just has all the other edges. I mean, she's got the movement edge, the kicking edge. She's better in the clinch. I think she's more likely to land takedowns in this fight as well. So I am going to lean with Lookboonmee as the winner in this one. But on DraftKings, she's priced at, I believe, 9,500. And that's just going to be a full fade for me. I don't know how she pays off a $9,500 salary. I think she would probably have to get takedowns in every round or an early finish. I guess that would be it. But she's not much of a finisher to me. So even though I'm picking Lookboonmee, my preferred play in this one is definitely Gomez. I think if Gomez is able to win this fight, she's going to score more than 10x her, $6,700 price tag on this one. So if she can get it done, which I think it is a pretty close fight, she could pull it out. I think she could score well. I also think she's a safe play for cash games, meaning she can still score 30 or 40 points in a loss, which is always okay when you only have to beat half the field. But I'm picking Lookboonmee, so it kind of takes away from what I want to get Gomez, ownership-wise. But how are you seeing this one go down?
Yeah, it's just kind of hard for me to see this not being a fairly competitive fight. And, on the money lines, as you can see on your screen there, we got one girl who's minus 250. And then you got one girl who's plus 200 range. So, I mean, it's an easy play in terms of where I think the money should be. It's obviously on the underdog here. In terms of the actual fight, Loma has the clinch, experience with the Muay Thai, but she also has the clinch advantage, of course. I feel like the fight will be in a clinch at times. Denise Gomez is very aggressive. She'll come through and she likes to do a lot of pocket boxing. I think she's a Muay Thai fighter as well. That's her background. But she likes to box a little bit more. Loma Lookboonmee is also a Thai fighter, but she's traditional Thai. She will do the low kick. She'll be quite low volume on the outside. She'll give one to take one, although she has adapted her style a little bit to be more outside footwork range fighter, which is needed in MMA. You can't just give one and take one because you get taken down or knocked out with those small gloves on. But yeah, I just feel like the fight's close, Like Loma's probably going to have the kicking advantage, but Denise Gomez is going to push forward, push a pace. Denise Gomez is going to, hit Loma a couple of times on the chin. Loma, it looks like she doesn't really like it when it gets gritty. We saw that against Sam Hughes, and also in her fight against Lupita Godinez. She will fight back. She's not just going to completely quit, but I just feel like her style is a little bit made for a more pretty fight on the outside, exchanging one for one. I don't think Gomez is going to really give her that. So Gomez is interesting for me here. I feel like she could get the win. She's plus 200. I don't know how you're seeing it in terms of the DraftKings perspective, but yeah, man, I don't know if I'm going to pull the trigger myself, but if I probably will, just out of principle. I feel like it's a close fight, and we're getting a plus 200, so we'll see how it shakes out.
I don't hate that at all. I think it's dog or pass all around. I picked the Lookboonmee as thinking if it was a pick'em fight, this is who I would lean with. But I do think the line is too wide We got minus 250 that the fight goes to a decision. And the only one of these two who can score well in a decision, at cost anyways, is going to be Gomez. So I will X Lookboonmee out of my optimizer over at DFS Army. If you haven't signed up yet, go over there, dfsarmy.com, use promo code Sleeveless. We had a member take down the Week 1 Millionaire Maker over on DraftKings and NFL. So it's the best time to come try us out, see what we got. I think all our projections, tools, coaches' notes, everything is what you guys would be looking for. So give us a try. I think you'll like it. Next one on the card, we got Trevin Giles minus 210 against Luis Casuke plus 180. And this is another one where I like both sides of it. I think the underdog can break the slate because he is kind of a round one fighter. All of his wins have come in round one. And then his UFC debut, he got extended into the third round. He got knocked out in that one, but he was just slowing down as the fight moved along. And him and his brother just have the same issues. Like they both have power. They both are decent wrestlers early, but they can't have a high pace for 15 minutes without slowing down or getting finished. And I just don't see him changing that, that quickly anyway. So I do think he has a round one edge in this one. I think he could knock out Giles. I think he could get a couple takedowns along the way also. But if Giles can make it out of that first round, I think he takes over in the second and the third. If it gets there, I think he looks like a huge favorite in the third round if it gets to that. So it could be a good live betting spot on Giles if he drops that first round. Look to get him at plus money or something like that. And I do think even if he drops that first round, he can come back and score enough points against a gas Casuke to score well on DraftKings as well. So I do like Giles, but at the same time, as I mentioned, man, if Casuke goes out there and gets a first round finish, he's going to be on the 100K lineup this week. So I have to target some Casuke, and I actually think he might be my preferred play of the two just because there's not a whole lot of underdogs on this card that have that type of ceiling, and that's what I like to chase is the ceiling. If he can go out there and do, his boom rather than bust type play, then he's on the 100K lineup, and that's what I'm chasing. But how do you see this fight playing out?
Yeah, it's funny because you said you see Trevin Giles being a massive favorite in round 3, and those are words that you very rarely hear. Trevin Giles being a massive favorite in round 3 because the guy, he looks good, he starts early, and he just capitulates usually, But in this fight, you're right. I mean, the guy's fighting Luis Casuke, who it seems like he's got no gas, right? And why would he have gas? He's finishing everybody in round 1, is in his entire career. Why would he have gas? He doesn't need to have gas. We see it time and time again in MMA. These fighters get all round 1 finishes. As soon as they get out of round 1, they don't know what to do. It's exactly what happened with Casuke, got finished in round 3 there. So I kind of agree with you in the fact that it could be a sneaky play on Casuke because, look, he's plus 180. He's expected to lose the fight. Trevin Giles minus 200 there, so we know who they're picking there. But if Casuke does win the fight, it's probably going to be an early knockout. I mean, we see Trevin Giles getting KO'd in the first round in his last fight. We've seen him got KO'd in the second round the fight before. So Luis Casuke is going to have 6-7 minutes to get the knockout here. So in terms of DraftKings, it's definitely a potential to happen. But in terms of the money line, I have to go with Giles, man. Just in terms of the fight in general, I think Trevin Giles is going to knock him out. I honestly think Trevin Giles can get an early knockout as well. Like I said, Trevin Giles starts out fast. And the thing is about Trevin, it's hard to get a read on him. It takes a while, He's not a usual fighter. Like Loma Lookboonmee, it's not going to take that long to get a read on her, in my opinion. She's very Muay Thai traditional, give one to take one. It's kind of easy to read that type of style, right? But not with Trevin Giles. He's light on his feet. He's bouncing in and out. He's got good boxing, but he fights in more of a karate stance, sort of like McGregor in a way. So that always takes 4 or 5 minutes to, get used to. So I honestly think Trevin Giles could bonk Luis Casuke early because Casuke is kind of a punching bag, in my opinion, especially when he's run out of gas. And he could run out of gas in 3.5 minutes here. He really could. We don't really know if he's going to be able to even go to full 5. So I don't know, man. I feel like Trevin Giles has got to win here. I probably would play Trevin Giles at minus 200 before I play Casuke at plus 180. If I was going to play Casuke, just go with a round 1. Why wouldn't you? He didn't really show much in round 2 and round 3 in his last fights. Just played a round 1. You're going to get a much better number. Luis Casuke in round 1, what's it looking like? Look, you're talking about plus 500, plus 750 on Casuke in round 1. So that's how I would target him. You want to take a plus 180 with a guy who can't go 15, or you want to take a plus 500 on a guy that's his only win condition historically. Not saying it's going to happen like that forever, but he's only ever won in round 1, ever, in his whole career. And he almost won in round 1 in his last one. He had Sasha Palatnikov dead to rights. I thought I was going to cash that plus 170 round 1 ticket, but it wasn't to be, So look, I think plus 500 for round 1 is live, and that's how I would play it. If I was going to play anything other than that, I feel like it's favorite or pass on the money line.
Agreed. Yep. Plus 500, plus 750. Those are solid ways to play that. DraftKings as well, because if he fights to his potential, gets that first round win, then he's on the optimal lineup. I think pre-fight, if I was going to bet Giles, I would rather just take plus money on him inside the distance. But as I mentioned, I think we can get a better line on Giles after round 1 if it gets there. So that's what I would wait for on his side, but I do think Giles wins this fight in the 2nd or the 3rd round, puts away a gassed Casuke, but we'll see. I think it's a good one for DraftKings. All right, next one on the card, we got Aspen Ladd, minus 140 against Sarah McMahon, plus 120. Man, I don't know. I mean, McMahon is one of the best wrestlers we've ever seen in WMMA, so I think she has a clear path to victory in this fight if she can go out there and wrestle for 2 or 3 rounds without gassing out. I do think her top control time would be good enough to grind out minutes in this one. And if she can just not gas in the 3rd round, win the first 2, I think this is her fight to lose, to be honest with you. So I do think she makes sense on DraftKings because what we like to target is grappling, but it's really hard to trust McMahon. She's like 42 years old. If she gets taken down, I think Ladd could probably finish her with ground and pound. I think Ladd is definitely the better striker in this one. So if McMahon starts to fail at takedown, she's probably in trouble here. But how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, similar to you. It's quite funny. I just chuckled because you're talking about, McCann winning and like you went, yeah, McCann, she can win 2 rounds, but just let out a big sigh, And I knew exactly what you meant when you let out that sigh. It's like it's the same story in every Sarah McMahon fight. She's got the tools to win. She's an amazing wrestler. She almost always wins round 1 in all of her fights. I mean, she's probably minus 500 to win round 1 against Amanda Nunes. You know what I mean? Like she wins round 1 at such a high clip, but she just capitulates, man. I mean, even against fighters who are not the best fighters, she got finished in round 2 by Marion Renault. She got finished by Ketlin Vieira in round 2. After starting well in both those fights, round 3, Juliana Pena, she got finished. And then even in her last fight, she looked great, 2 rounds to 0. She was dominating Rosa in the wrestling. Then she gets taken down in round 3 and she gets mounted at one point. And I don't know, if that was a 4-round fight, you feel like Carol Rosa would have won in the 4th round, So she can't be trusted, Sarah McMahon. It's so annoying because like, I'm exactly the same as you. It's annoying. You're watching the fight, you're watching the tape. You're like, she can easily win this fight. Like, why can't I bring myself to bet her? Why does she have to be so flaky? And that's just that's the exact feeling that I have here, right? I feel like she can win round 1 or 2, but she's very flaky. Like you said, if Aspen Ladd gets on top, I think Sarah McMahon could, she's probably done. And the one thing I will say about this stylistic matchup is that Aspen Ladd loves this type of matchup. She loves a matchup where it's going to be close quarters. She's going to be wrestling. She's going to be fighting in these grappling positions, in these transitions. She loves that. Aspen Ladd loves that fight. Aspen Ladd lost her last fight against Rocky Pennington and her fight before that against Norma Dumont. Those fighters are strikers who like to keep it on the feet. Rocky's a boxer. Norma Dumont is also a boxer. They kept it on the feet. They kept Aspen Ladd at bay, and they was able to easily win. The only other loss in Aspen Ladd's career, Jermaine Durandamy, pure kickboxer, 1st round knockout, right? So Aspen Ladd likes these type of fights. She loses against these strikers who can, stay out of the grappling. Sarah McMahon's not a striker. Sarah McMahon's not going to stay out of the grappling here. Sarah McMahon wins round 1 probably, but I feel like Aspen Ladd is going to reverse position. She's going to buck her off. She's going to sweep her, or she's going to get on top herself at some point, and she's going to dominate from top position. And I do feel like Aspen Ladd's going to get the finish here. I'm not confident in it. Like, I'm not probably going to be betting it at all. Maybe I go Aspen Ladd inside the distance if I'm feeling funky, but just in terms of a play, I probably will leave it completely. I feel like Sarah's going to win the fight and then she's going to give it up like she does in a lot of her fights. So it's stay away for me, but I'll go with Aspinalled inside the distance as my pure prediction.
Yeah, that'll score well if it happens. And these two ladies are priced in the mid-range. So it's another one where I'm cool with both sides, but I don't love this fight. I would rather stay away from it with my single entry rather than just pick a side between the two. If I'm making 150 lineups, I'm cool just getting, 20% or something of each of them. But I feel like McMahon, if Ladd wins this fight, I feel like she's losing until she wins. And if that's, in the second or third round, maybe she's not scoring enough points to get it done. On the McMahon side, I do think she probably puts up a decent score if she's able to win. But I don't know that she has 3 rounds of wrestling ability in her at 42 or 43 years old to really have that high of a ceiling. And if Sarah McMahon's best case comes out here, she wins. Luis Casuke comes out here, his best case happens and he wins. He's more likely to be on the optimal lineup. And there's another one or two we might have talked about as well that have that same outcome. So I'd rather just target the ceilings. And I don't think McMahon has 100-point ceiling. Even if she wins a wrestling-based decision, she probably scores 80 to 90 points, something like that, which could be enough to get it done. I'm cool getting exposure there, but I just don't think this is one we have to target. Where at the same time, I'm fine targeting either side. If you were going to tell me you want to go overweight to Ladd, I wouldn't talk you off it. If you were going to tell me you want to go overweight to McMahon, I wouldn't talk you off that one either. But I will side, man, I don't know. I think it's kind of a coin flip, so I'll just take the underdog in McMahon to win 2 rounds and drop the third, take it 29-28. All right, next one. We got another grappling fest. We got Pat Sabatini minus 180 against Damon Jackson plus 155. I feel like Pat Sabatini is just a better version of Damon Jackson, to be honest with you. Everything Damon Jackson's good at, I just think Pat Sabatini might be a little bit better at. So I am going to roll with him here. I do think most of this fight is taking place on the ground, which is always good for DraftKings. Sabatini has scored well in the past. So is Jackson. Most of Jackson's wins are inside the distance. So if he ends up getting a win here, good chance it's inside the distance. He could score well also. But my preferred play in this one's going to be Sabatini. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I got Sabatini as well, man. Jackson's always a dog. He's always a fighter. He's always going to be there. But, yeah, I agree, man. Sabatini's kind of just better everywhere, in my opinion. I've been high on Sabatini since he first came in the UFC, honestly. I feel like that wrestling pace that he puts on, it's hard, man. It's hard to deal with, and these motherfuckers can't deal with it. And we have seen Damon Jackson being taken down and kind of controlled in that wrestling pace before. Namely against Mirsad Bektic, he was completely dominated for 13 minutes. And then, that was the crazy submission at the end that Mirsad Bektic kind of always gives away. Similar to Sarah McMahon, he kind of just fades. So Damon Jackson's been controlled before. I think he'll be controlled again. And I think on this weekend, he'll probably be controlled. Sabatini's live for the submission, but he's also live for the decision. So I wouldn't get too hot and heavy on how you want to play him. If you want to play him, I feel like you just lay the money line if you want to play him, because if you're taking a submission, it could definitely happen. But if you're taking a decision, that could also happen. It's just risky, in my opinion. Some of these books offer submission or decision props. That's probably a better way to play him. You might get Sabatini at like minus 140 or something there, which is a lot better than minus 200, in my opinion. Very unlikely he gets a stoppage finish, especially because he doesn't really go for ground and pound that much. He's much, much more of a submission threat. I actually think he's got no TKOs in his entire career. So, for those of you who have a book which offers that prop, definitely look to play that depending on the line. If it's like minus 180, just take the minus 200. But yeah, if it's a little bit better than minus 150, for sure, take that. I feel like Sabatini's going to roll here. Not much more to say about this one.
I agree. I think Jackson will be hard to finish, so I see Sabatini winning 2 or 3 rounds here, mostly just getting takedowns, spending time in top control, hunting for submissions that he probably doesn't get, but it'll be enough to just dominate the fight, get a clear decision win. And he scored well in decisions also. He's got back-to-back fights where he scored 105, 106 points on DraftKings, so those are good scores to me. I'll take that. All right, next one on the card. We got Anthony Hernandez minus 175 against Marc-Andre Barriault plus 150. 2 high-paced fighters here, more so on the grappling for Hernandez and on the striking for Barriault. But I do think it's a pretty close fight. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, so we start the main card now. This is the curtain jerker of the main card, and I was telling you how middle to last year I kind of was targeting these main card openers and the prelim openers as potential fights to finish inside the distance. I feel like they've done it again here. I think Hernandez and Barriault, I think it's a firework matchup. I mean, anytime Fluffy fights, it's fireworks, right? It's always a banger. And then Barriault, on the other hand, he's similar, he's a grind eye or wear you out. I think it's a close fight. I'm excited for this fight. I'm excited for this main card in general. I think there's a lot of finishing potential and just a lot of excitement potential. I kind of lean Barriault to get the win. I just feel like, well, when you're talking about the money lines, because Barriault's like plus 150, I just feel like it's a little bit wide, man. If anything, you could convince me this is a minus 110 type fight. Maybe you lean a little bit to Fluffy because he's got the grappling upside. But I feel like Barriault's got better cardio here. Obviously, we know Fluffy's got good cardio. He'll dig deep, but I don't think it's better than Barriault's. And I feel like this fight's going to, play out in the clinch a lot. I feel like Fluffy Hernandez is really going to be trying to take down Barriault. But I actually think Barriault's got solid takedown defense. I know he was taken down like 5 times against Junyoung Park, but man, those takedowns, he didn't really solidify position. And, we saw Fluffy take down Junyoung Park multiple times. So you would instantly think that, Fluffy's going to be able to dominate Barriault in the grappling, But I don't think that's the case. I feel like he will get a couple of takedowns, but I feel like he's going to gas out trying. And I think Barriault could come on late here. I don't know. I like Barriault in this fight. I feel Barriault's live for the submission even in this fight, just like he did in his last fight. So I'm going to side with the underdog here in a fight which I think, both fighters have an even chance to win.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I'm on the Barriault side as well. I'm okay with favoring Hernandez here, but I feel like it should be closer to like minus 125, minus 135, something like that. So the line is a little bit wide in this one. I do see Hernandez having success with takedowns, but I don't know that it's going to be enough success throughout the course of 15 minutes to either get his hand raised or to not get finished, as you mentioned at some point. So I would rather roll with the underdog here. I think he does have the striking edge. I think he's improved a lot since he came into the UFC also until his most recent fight. Looks more dangerous now as well. Strikes at a high pace. So I'm going to roll with Barriault as well. I think it should be closer to a pick 'em fight. And on DraftKings, Hernandez, man, that pace, it's hard to – you can't really fade Hernandez if you're making multiple lineups in this one. You definitely need some exposure if you're doing 150. But I would rather have Barriault there in my single entry as well, mostly because he's an underdog. I'm picking to win. There's not a whole lot of those on this card, which I always just like to pick my dogs that I'm picking to win, even if they don't have the biggest ceilings. But I do think Barriault has a good ceiling here with the pace he can set, with his finishing potential. So I do like Barriault, and I'm glad to hear that you do as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we've disagreed on anything, and we didn't prior plan this. We didn't speak about the card at all. We just come on. Hopefully we get some disagreement, just makes for some good discourse. But I feel like we've agreed on.
I mean, I guess to start off, you picked Mata, I picked Van Camp. That's one
true.
right there.
Okay.
But I also agree that Mata can knock him out in any round. So I don't agree. I don't disagree too much on that one. But yeah, maybe we'll get one here with this one. Let's see. We got Tanner Boser minus 165 against Rodrigo Nacimento plus 140. This betting line's been moving in favor of Nacimento all week long. We've seen Boser struggle with takedowns. Nacimento's a good grappler. He's dangerous on the ground. So, I mean, it makes sense to me, but I'm on the Boser side here. I think he has a big edge on the feet. And if Nacimento's struggling with takedowns, where I don't think he's a very good wrestler, I think he's a good grappler. And if he can get a takedown, I think he can have success on the mat. But I don't think I can rely on him to get those takedowns. And I think he can get knocked out or just, out-volumed on the feet. I think more likely knocked out at some point, to be honest with you. That's what I'm picking here is Boser by knockout. So he's going to be my pick here. I think that there's value in the line at this point at minus 165. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm picking Boser by knockout as well. I know a lot of people are on the Nacimento side. I can see why Boser struggled with takedowns, grappling. I actually cashed on Ilir Latifi at a big underdog price against Tanner Boser. And I also cashed on his decision line there. But he kind of impressed me at points in that fight. Ilir Latifi is a much, much better takedown artist than Rodrigo Nacimento, in my opinion. And honestly, he's probably, just as good as solidifying top position. He's just nowhere near the level of grappler. One thing about Tanner Boser, he can get taken down, but he's pretty safe on the ground. Like, he won't really, like, he'll try and get up very quickly. He's not great at his get up game, but I don't really just think Rodrigo Nacimento is just going to run through him on the ground in terms of a submission or something, right? So if that's the case, I feel like there's more chance for Tanner Boser to last a round if he does get taken down early, or even get back up to his feet after a couple of minutes of, defending position and stuff like that. And I actually don't trust Rodrigo Nacimento's gas tank one bit. I know he rallied in his last fight and got that second round finish, but I feel like when the going gets tough, the guy doesn't necessarily want to be there. I feel like he could quit if he gets hit hard a couple of times. And I just feel like in terms of his body language and some of the cardio concerns that I've had and I've seen, and even the chin, I just feel like that all makes for a high likelihood of Tanner Boser getting a finish at some point here. So I'm going to take Tanner Boser to get a finish on the feet.
Yep, that's what I'm going with as well. Maybe the first round's a little sketchy, but I think the longer this fight goes, the more it favors Boser. And I think at some point Nacimento goes down. I mean, it's not a good look when you're losing the striking to Alan Badeau. So I'm never going to be really high on somebody that goes out there and is losing any minutes to Badeau. So give me Boser in this one, and I'll probably end up with a play as long as I can get it in before, you jack up the line at all. So we'll see on that one. All right, next one on the card, we got what is possibly a squash match. Joe Pifer minus 425 against Alan Amadovsky plus 340. Pifer coming off a Contender Series knockout. Amadovsky coming off of 3 losses in the UFC where he has a combined 9 punches landed in those 3 strikes. I don't know why he's getting a 4th shot. I think it's just to kind of boost up Pifer here. But I think Pifer has the wrestling to dominate this fight on the ground. He has the power to knock him out in any round on the feet. So give me Pifer to finish him with the TKO at some point. Do you have any hot take in this one?
No hot take. I mean, you can't really get behind Amadovsky from what he's shown us in his UFC career. It's funny, like coming to the UFC 7-0, all like finishes, brutal ones, early ones, and then just gets completely mollywopped by people like John Phillips and Joseph Holmes, who are honestly bottom of the barrel UFC fighters. No disrespect to them, but they are on the low end of the UFC. Someone's got to be, right? And those two are Joseph Holmes and John Phillips. John Phillips not even with the UFC anymore, I don't think. And yeah, he got a 14-second knockout. So I feel like Joseph Pifer is going to get submission or a TKO, probably round 1. Yeah, not much to say.
Yeah, the only issue on the Pifer side is that he's priced up to $9,700 this week on DraftKings, which is almost unheard of. It's usually like $9,500 is the highest we see. Sometimes we'll get a $9,600, and usually $9,600 gets priced out of the optimal lineup. So if Pifer goes out there, gets a first round knockout, scores 105, 110 points, he might be priced to a point where he still doesn't make the optimal lineup just because it's hard to fit in the other 5 people in your lineup when you're paying that much for that one guy, especially if someone else on the card scores 105 or 110 points as well. That'll knock him off right there. So I don't know what I'm going to do with Pifer yet. If I can afford him, I like him, but I have a hard time thinking I'll be able to afford him easily in this one. So I'm going to have to let the optimizer do its thing on this one, see what it spits out for me. But minus 120 for Pifer to win in round 1 is a pretty good line. You always like to see that on DraftKings. He could even rack up a couple takedowns along the way and really score well. So it's definitely going to be Pifer or pass. I will be Xing Amadovsky out of my player pool. If he wins, it'll be a first-round knockout at very low ownership. He'll be on the optimal lineup, but I'll take my chances on that not happening, and I'll just take my my leverage on other dogs. Next one, we got a fun fight. Andre Fili, minus 130 against Bill Algeo, plus 110. I think this will be a high-paced fight. Either guy could mix in takedowns. Could be a fun standing, striking battle. I think it's close to a coin flip, so I ended up picking Algeo as my pick, but you could flip my prediction if you're high on Fili in this one. How do you see it going down?
I do think Fili gets the win here. The only thing with Andre Fili is that sometimes he's hard to trust, We've seen him drop the ball a couple of times. I feel like there's been fights where he could have performed a lot better and he didn't. He's been in the UFC for a very long time, so you just have to be a little bit wary. But in terms of this stylistic matchup, I feel like he's got the edge in most areas. You know, Bill Algio's a cardio guy. He's a machine, but I wouldn't say that he's got better cardio than Andre Fili, really. I mean, Fili's never shown to have poor cardio. We saw Bill Algio, you know, slow down a lot in that Brendan Loughnane fight. So I know Algio's known as pace guy, but I also don't think that, you know, like a lot of times Bill Algio's advantage is the cardio, especially like in his last fight, in his last two fights, he's had the cardio advantage. But I feel like in this fight, he doesn't really have that here. So, you know, that could change the fight a little bit. If he feels like Andre's going to slow down and then he just never does, he could, you know, lose a decision. That happens a lot of times. You know, you're waiting for the other fighter to slow down and they kind of just never do. Maybe similar to the Weeks and Lioness fight last week. I didn't actually watch it, that one, but you know, everyone thought Lioness would just die after round one, and he didn't, and then he ends up winning a split decision. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe he didn't deserve it. But either way, I feel like in this fight, Andre Fili's probably got the striking advantage. The one thing I will say is that Bill Algio has the volume advantage, and it could offset that striking advantage that Fili has. But Fili does a decent job at quelling volume. You know, if he's fighting a guy who is a volume guy like Algio, he does a decent job of maybe not allowing that fighter to get as much volume as he does in his previous fight. So, look, I do think it's a close fight in general, but I think Fili has the advantages in most spots here. So I'm going to take Andre Fili. I think he should be priced up as like a moderate favorite, small to moderate favorite.
Yeah, I'm cool with either side on DraftKings, but I do think it'll be enough back and forth where I don't expect to see a 9,500 plus point score in this one. So I probably end up getting away from it, going to other spots I feel better about. But I agree with Fili being the more well-rounded, the more experienced guy. I think he's got the better movement, the better kicks on the feet, more power as well. But I like Algio's boxing. I like his volume. I'm always a volume guy, so anyone who's going to be, you know, just leading on volume over rounds kind of gets my score usually. So that's just why I think this fight's close. But whoever's going for takedowns, if they can get the takedown, I think that person in top control will be grinding out the minutes on the ground. I just have a hard time seeing this fight play out. So it makes sense as a mid-range priced fight. Whoever you like, feel free to go high on it. But I'd probably end up underweight to this fight as a whole because there's so many other people on the card that I talked about that I want to be overweight on, that it's some of these people got to go. So I feel like this is a fight that might get a little bit overowned because just it's going to be one of the better fights on the card. But if I can just get a back and forth split decision type of fight, I think I can avoid the winner being on the optimal lineup here. And I would just rather target fights like this next one where we got Chidi Njokuani minus 125 against Gregory Rodriguez plus 105. Fight doesn't go to decision, minus 250, minus 280. And that's what I expect. I don't think the judges will be needed in this one. Both of these guys have 100-plus point potential, and they're priced right there in the mid-range, 8,200, 8K. So I just love this fight as a whole. Who are you picking? Maybe we'll get a disagreement on this one.
Yeah, this is an epic fight. I've actually been very high on RoboCop, one of my favorite fighters in MMA since he came into the UFC. I remember I played him in his debut against Dasko Todorovic, and he was like a plus 150 underdog, and I played him there. I've played him a few more times in the UFC, played him against Jun Young Park, which was a bit of a heart scare because that was a crazy back and forth fight. Both fighters almost got knocked out, and then he just pulled it out the bag. And in his last fight, it was epic as well. He got that first round finish. It looked like he was minus 1,000 in that spot, just absolutely run through Julian Marquez, who Julian Marquez doesn't really get run through, you know. So that was pretty solid for RoboCop to do that. Look, I feel like it's a close fight. I feel like any fighter can hurt each other. I feel like RoboCop has the grappling advantage as he does in most fights. He just never uses it because he gasses out. I just feel like the glaring difference, right, in this fight is RoboCop's chin. And maybe want to sprinkle RoboCop's cardio in there because it's not as bad as his chin, but, you know, it has shown to let himself down a couple of times. But, yeah, as I said, we'll just stick on the chin. We won't speak about the cardio, although I do think Chidi has a pretty clear cardio advantage. RoboCop hasn't got a good chin. You know, he gets wobbled in a lot of fights. He gets wobbled in most fights. And Chidi hits very, very hard, man. I played Chidi in his Contender Series bout, and I played him in his last fight against Dusko Todorovic, and he got a brutal elbow there, got a finish in both the fights I just mentioned. Came in off the Bellator scene, and we saw that his weakness in Bellator was being taken down, grappled, grinded out, submitted. Gregory Rodriguez, we can't trust him to go to the grappling here. He never does. He shoots like 1 or 2 takedowns every now and then. And when he does, he seems really good, but he just doesn't really do anything with it. Even against Arman Petrosian, Petrosian was like, he's a pure kickboxer, right? And Gregory took him down, but he couldn't really do much. He had him in that Sulev stretch once, but he couldn't really do much. Petrosian kept getting back to his feet. So I don't know, man. I feel like Gregory, if he's smart, he'll probably go for the takedowns. But I'm picking Chidi in this fight. I can't ignore Chidi's power versus Robocop's chin. And I can't ignore Robocop wanting to box for most of the minutes in all of his fights. So if he boxes here, I feel like he's going to get caught. Chidi Njokuanu to get a knockout in this fight.
I mean, I don't disagree. I do think that's his most likely path to win. The chin is definitely a concern. The cardio is definitely a concern on the Rodriguez side. But I would have flipped this line. I do slightly favor Rodriguez here. I think he could win the fight anywhere. He could, if you're turning off knockouts, I think he's live to win a 15-minute striking match, to be honest with you. But his big edge is going to be on the ground. If I'm his coach, I'm telling him to go for takedowns. And if he's if he's fighting optimally, then that's what he's going to do. And I think he has a huge edge on the ground. I'm going to pick him to get a submission in this one, plus 450, plus 500 by submission. That's not a bad line. On DraftKings, it'll score well. Even if he wins a grappling-based decision on DraftKings, that's going to end up scoring well. But I expect that this one will end inside the distance. Rodriguez can get a knockout or a submission, and Njokuanu can get a knockout in any round. And the later the fight goes, the more it probably starts to favor him on the feet. But I'll go with Rodriguez here as the guy I want to get leverage on. If I have to choose between the two, I'd be cool getting leverage on both of them, but I want to make it a point to get leverage on the Rodriguez side because he can go out there and break a slate like he did in the last one where he had like 3+ knockdowns. And that's always a good thing. If he can go out there and get 3+ takedowns this time, I'll feel a lot better about that, and I think he'll get the win that way. So give me Rodriguez, and I'm very high on him as well, but man, that gas tank and that chin are definitely a concern, and they have stopped me from betting this one, but right now he's on my possible tickets. We'll see what happens, though.
Yeah, and I completely agree. You know, it's a close fight. Anyone could win. If you're talking about who's the better fighter, it's probably Rodriguez. He has more ways to win. But Chidi Njokuanu TKO is sitting at plus 200. So that's actually the reason I took it. And I'm not even outright saying that's going to happen. Although I will say that because I put a bet on it. So let's just put the good juju in the air. For me, the money line is accurate. You're talking about minus 110s. I feel like this is minus 110, you know. But no, I've 100% what you said is very true. In terms of DraftKings, probably would look to play Rodriguez over Njokuanu just because I feel like Rodriguez has more chances to win. You know, he could win that decision. He could win submission and he could win knockout. Whereas I feel Njokuanu's like, he's kind of, he almost has to win by knockout in this spot. So it's different between the DraftKings side and the my pure prediction, you know, as it usually is.
True, yeah. If Chidi doesn't get a knockout and he wins this fight, then he probably doesn't score well. So I didn't really even think about that yet. I was just kind of thinking if Chidi wins, it's a knockout.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point to bring up. He is probably knockout or bust on DraftKings, even though he's only like 8.2K. We don't need 100+, but if 5 or 6 guys on this card do end up scoring 100+, then we are going to end up needing it. So yeah, give me Rodriguez. Hopefully he ends up pulling it out. Next one, we got a banger. These are two of my favorite fighters. I've never picked against either one of these guys. We got Corey Sandhagen minus 195 against Song Yadong plus 165. Should be an all-out banger. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, tough fight. Corey Sandhagen's going to have the volume upside here. He's probably going to have the footwork upside, I would say, and the fight IQ maybe. But Yadong Song, it's hard to pick against the dude. I mean, the guy hits very hard. He comes in like a marauder. He'll swing in the pocket. I feel like he's got a huge durability advantage in this spot. Yadong Song, you know, can take a brick to the head and he probably won't even be cut open, let alone wobbled or dazed. Whereas Corey Sandhagen, we've seen him hurt a couple of times. You know, he was dropped by Yan. He was wobbled by Yan a few times. I think he was dropped in a couple of fights. I think, did Lineker drop him, or he's been dropped before as well? I can't remember exactly who it was against, but yeah, obviously did get finished by Aljamain Sterling, but that was a bit different. But yeah, I just feel like it's a close fight. If I just can't get behind a Yadong Song play though. Like I'm trying to play Yadong Song because I feel like it's a close fight and he's plus 160. And I feel like Yadong Song maybe hasn't shown his best yet in the UFC. So there could be some improvements that we see from him. But I feel like he can let rounds slip by quite a lot. You know, he did it against Julio Arce once. You know, even against Casey Kenny, maybe made the rounds a little bit closer than it should have been. You know, although that was a good showing from him as well. But I just feel like his style at times is a little bit low volume. Like he's high volume when he gets in the pocket and when he gets in his groove. But even against Kyler Phillips, you know, is very good on the outside, very good. You know, he's like a dancer. He stays on the outside, comes into range. I think Corey Sandhagen may be able to fight in a similar way to Kyler Phillips. You know, they are different, but on top of Corey Sandhagen may be able to implement that Kyler Phillips game plan in his own way. On top of that, Corey Sandhagen probably does have the grappling advantage here. We've seen Yadong Song struggle mightily in the grappling against Kyler Phillips and also against Cody Stamann. That was a draw. He almost got finished in that third round. You know, he was mounted and pure domination there. So Corey Sandhagen can go to the grappling here. And I think Corey Sandhagen is a high-level fighter enough to where he could switch up his game plan entirely. And in the third round, he gets hurt, but then he just grapples for literally the next 2 rounds and wins. So I feel like Corey Sandhagen has some advantages in this fight. I'm not going to play Corey. There's no way I would play Corey. As I said, I tried to convince myself to play Yadong Song, but for me, man, I'm just gonna chill. I'm just gonna kick back, watch it, and just enjoy the fight from a fan's perspective rather than sweating because I've got money on it and just make it an unnecessary watch for me. I'm just going to enjoy the whole fight.
I'm definitely cool with that. That might be what I do as well. I would agree it's probably dog or pass on the money line. I do expect a close fight, but I'm leaning Sandhagen. I just think he has more ways to win this fight. He's a high volume striker. He's a slicker striker. He can mix in takedowns. He's got slick takedowns when he wants those as well. And he does have the grappling edge. Give Song Yadong the power edge, durability edge. I expect a close fight. If Song Yadong wins this fight, I think he's probably going to be locked in on the optimal lineup on DraftKings. If Corey Sandhagen wins this fight, I don't know that that's going to be the case because he's priced so highly. And he'll also have like 50% ownership as well. So I don't exactly know what I'm going to do with this one. I'm really cool with anything where I might just let the optimizer figure this out for me and whatever it gives me. If it's like 40% Sandhagen, 35, 40% Song Yadong, I'm cool with it. But in my single entry, I might just start in other spots and see what I can fit towards the end of my lineup. And if this fight doesn't make it in there, I'll just tell myself that it's going to be a Corey Sandhagen decision win and he just doesn't score enough points. But I love this fight. I think it will be a high-paced fight. They both have 100-plus point potential. It's just that it's going to be the most owned fight on the card as well. So do what you want with it. I'm picking Sandhagen. He's the guy with 5-round experience. I think he does just out-volume Song Yadong, maybe mixes in some takedowns as well, takes at least 3 rounds on the scorecards here. But I love this fight. I cannot wait for it. This should be our fight of the night. And I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
All right, to end every card, we like to do a kill shot. So somebody that we think might go a little bit overlooked on DraftKings that could be the key to our 100K lineup. Do you have anybody in mind this week, James?
Yeah, like in terms of being overlooked, it's always a little bit hard to judge, but I'm just going to go with an underdog. You know, usually the underdogs may be a little bit more overlooked, especially in fights that are not as high profile. I feel like one that's going under the radar, which is going to be an absolute war. And I feel like both fighters have a chance to finish. And I'm going to take the underdog. And we both agreed on this one. It's Marc-Andre Barriault, right? So he's plus 150 there. So already you get a good price on him. And then if you look at the under, the line is set at under 2.5. And it's well, if the fight doesn't go to decision, it's minus 150. So the bookmakers are saying this fight's going to end inside the distance, right? And I'm picking Barriault outright. So I'm saying Barriault's going to get a finish. And I feel like the later the fight goes, Barriault's going to be pumping out that volume. I mean, it's not crazy to feel like Barriault can land 100 strikes here and then in the third round get a finish. You know, I feel like Fluffy's going to have a good start, but Barriault's going to be pumping out that volume if he's still alive. I feel like he could get a couple of takedowns of his own in the third round when Fluffy's completely gassed. And I do think he's going to end up finally getting a finish late in the round. So, you know, he's going to get a late finish. He's an underdog. And he's going to have 13, 14 minutes to pump up that volume before getting the finish. So I think that could be a decent play. And I don't think many people are going to be picking him in DraftKings. So yeah, I'll go with that. I'll go with Mark.
That's who I was going to pick as well. So I will switch mine over to RoboCop, Gregory Rodriguez. Give me a first round submission for Rodriguez. Put him on the optimal lineup. But either way, man, I can't wait for that fight. There's so many good fights on this card. It should be a good one, and it's free as well. But thank you, James, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. If you have anything you want to promote, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. I've enjoyed it. Our first one, we smashed it out in just an hour, so that's good. Hopefully, we gave the viewers some concise breakdowns. Thank you to all the viewers. Thanks, everyone watching. I've got my handicapping service, Lucrative MMA, which is where I give out my picks and predictions. You can go to lucrativemmabetting.com. Other than that, I got my YouTube channel. I got my Twitter. You know where to find me. Lucrative MMA. Give out a lot of free content. Do podcasts like this all the time. So, yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for giving me the floor. Hopefully, we can make some money. Marc-Andre Barriault, third round submission for the boys. And I'm excited for the card, my man.
Hell yeah. Let's go, Barriault. Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Good luck to you this weekend. Good luck to everybody listening. Go win something.